the primary catalyst behind what we're seeing here is just a propensity to numb out with food. Um, the fact that you're going through a difficult time in life and it has brought you into a depressed state. The food makes you feel better while you're eating it for that temporary period while it's being consumed. And obviously, since that's very temporary, I mean, it only lasts as long as you're eating. You want to eat more of it because you want that feeling to last as long as possible. So it's not like when you take a drug, that drug does have an effect, an extended period. And I'm not encouraging anyone to do that. That would be the worst idea you could possibly take. And that's not a suitable replacement for what you're doing either. So
started thinking about it for a second.
but when you think, if anyone's done alcohol or drugs, you know that there's a sustained effect. You know, you drink and you get drunk and then it lasts for a while. It's not like you need to keep drinking drink after drink after drink in order to sustain that feeling of intoxication for any length of time. With food, literally, it's when it's in your mouth, you swallow it, it's done, and you got to eat more. It's like you literally are only benefiting in terms emotionally from the food for as long as it's being consumed. So the temptation when it comes to food addiction is it's no one, as people who haven't experienced it, have no idea how devastating it can be, because you end up finishing what amounts to 500 calories of carbs, consuming any kind of dessert that you can think of. And if you're not full, you will keep going. You will want to keep going. If you can get more, you will do so, especially when you're alone, you're in the environment that you described, family's away, you're by yourself. It's like, this is what's making me feel good. And I'm going to have as much as I can possibly have of this because I want it to last as long as it possibly can. Because when it's done, when I'm no longer consuming that food, when I'm no longer feeling intoxicated by the calories, by the fat, by the carbs, by the flavor, suddenly then I'm left thinking of what I've just done. I don't want to think about that either. I don't want my mind to gravitate towards, I just ate 1,000 calories that I didn't need. My weight's going in the wrong direction. And what's the count? Well, how do you counteract that? Well, I just eat more. Then I don't have to think about it.
You're
things
dead
just
on.
get worse and worse and worse. It perpetuates itself. So I think that's the main catalyst behind why it is that you're eating more now than you have been throughout the past 4 months. It's just that you're in an emotional state right now that's depressed as a result of the seizure and all the ramifications of that. And then all of a sudden that puts you in a mental state where I need to find a way to be able to escape that. And this is the easiest route. It's the route you've always used your entire life. It works every single time. So that's what I'm going to do. And there's nothing that's going to stand in my way from doing it because I need to feel good. I need to feel better. Something needs to lift up my spirits. And this is what's doing it right about now. It's an easy fix. So right now it's medicating you. And just like you said, when you're consuming that food and then a period of lucidity hits and suddenly you look at what you've done, you start getting angry. Yeah. It's like, what am I doing? Like, I don't really want to do this. Like, I don't certainly want the flip side of it. I don't want to gain the weight that results from my behavior. I certainly also don't want to give up what it is that it's accomplishing for me emotionally. It's allowing me to feel better in the moment, but I definitely don't want the flip side of that. So it almost feels like you're sabotaging yourself intentionally. Now, there are people who do that, out of a dislike, sort of, something happens in their life, they blame themselves for it on a subconscious level, and suddenly they do things to themselves that are self-destructive. They don't even realize they're doing it for that reason, but they're punishing themselves essentially for what it is that they did because they're angry at themselves. They blame themselves for whatever it is that happened, and then they take that out on themselves by doing things that are harmful on a subconscious level, not something that you think through, but something that's happening on a deep level that you're not even aware of. In your case, I don't think it's so much that. There can be a part of that can play a role, but I think it's because you gain so much comfort from those types of foods that it's allowing you to escape what needs to be done in order to heal the wound of what happened in your life, which you need to focus on that. You need to heal that. You need to accept it, and you need to be able to grieve it and then start walking forward from that in order to be able to move away from all the numbing behaviors that you do to try and deal with it now. It's easier said than done, obviously, because as with anything that anyone's experiencing, um, the first the first instinct is to escape. Like if I could get away from it, if I could just forget about it, I will instantly feel better. So everyone gravitates towards whatever it is that they do to feel better in times of stress. And it's going to be eating, it's going to be shopping, it's going to be gambling, it's going to be drugs, alcohol, sex, whatever. It doesn't, whatever that person's addiction happens to be, coping mechanism for stress happens to be, that's what they're going to run to. And in your case, it's food. So that just becomes the easy fix. The hard fix, which is the one that most people try to escape for as long as possible, sometimes for the rest of their lives, unfortunately, is to deal with reality of the reality that you're being dealt, and to legitimately grieve it to the point where all of the hostility that's inside of you, the anger, the sadness, the disappointment, all of that is felt, all of that is absorbed inside of you. You speak about it, because if you hold it in and you don't think about it and you don't speak about it, it starts to fester, and it leads you down this path of numbing, where you just want to get away from it. So anytime you start feeling depressed, which is just a sign that you haven't, there's certain things that have not been dealt with that need to be addressed, you end up numbing more and more and more, and then it just starts to become a snowball effect where it just gets worse and worse and worse. So dealing with it is of paramount importance, but it is rather fresh still, because it didn't happen long ago. Time does help with that, but it's also being intentional and being able to, acknowledge the impact that it's had on you emotionally, to be able to speak about all the feelings that you have within you that haven't been addressed, and then to be able to not only speak about it, but then legitimately grieve it, feel the disappointment and the sadness and all of the grief associated with something like this, and allow the healing process to take place. If we lose a loved one, we go through a process of grieving in order to be able to truly move on. If we skip that process, we hang on to the pain. We take it with us, and usually then we try to numb it with all the behaviors that people use to do that. But if you end up instead addressing the situation head on and dealing with that grief, and which involves tears, which involves anger, which involves all of the emotions that are within you, dormant within you, which in a depressed state, they get pushed down, they get shoved down deep because you don't want to deal with them. And that's what depression is. You're depressing your emotions, you're pushing them down because you don't want to deal with them. And when you push something down long enough, it starts coming up in ugly ways. And usually the ways it comes up with more of coping mechanisms and numbing to try and feel better, because the depression doesn't feel good. So the alternative is I'm going to feel good doing the type of food that you eat, or whatever it is the person has a difficulty with in terms of their own particular addiction. So yes, dealing with that is like the first line of defense, is having to deal with that. Quite obviously, on the flip side, while you're dealing with it, you're still going to be tempted to eat the way that is inconsistent with the majority of this diet, because it does work and makes you feel better. I mean, that's the only reason why you're doing it. You're certainly not doing it because you want to weigh 350. You're doing it because you want to feel better. It's all about trying to improve your mood in the easiest and quickest way possible, and it absolutely works. The people who are in this type of scenario, they have to ask themselves, and you have to ask them yourself as well, because you know what the food is doing for you. The food is an escape mechanism, and it's making you feel better in the moment. Is that something that, at this stage in your life, is it something that you're just going to try and do, as you were speaking just earlier about your your goal is to try, let's just maintain our weight. Let's see if we can get through a week, which is good. I mean, it's definitely, you have to start somewhere, and you've got to get control of the weight gain before you can go in the other direction. And that's going to put a lot less pressure on you to be able to take it week by week. I mean, this is not a sprint. We're taking this step by step, week by week. So it's absolutely something that it's a valid approach that I fully endorse. We're not trying to snap our fingers and turn this around immediately, because in reality, we're trying to make it livable. And to make it livable, we got to be realistic with what it is that you're willing to do.